Good morning, y'all. We are going to do a lesson today on polynomials, which is basically the last thing I wanted to teach you guys for this course. And so this will be the last new concept that we cover. It'll take us a while to get through everything we need to learn about polynomials, but this will be the last thing that we're going to look at from now until Christmas break. I am stuck at home until December the 8th because I did test positive for COVID. No, I don't feel bad. I cannot taste my morning coffee or smell it, which is a little bit weird. But outside of that, I feel perfectly fine at this point. So if you're worried about me, don't be. But I do wish I was at school with you, and I'm not. So I'm going to have to deal with this video situation here. So I'll be recording and posting videos, providing practice for you guys, and then making myself accessible with a Google Meet. So basically, just reversing the way we were doing it when you were home. Now we'll do it that way because I'm stuck at home. The difference there is that both my kids will be here. So if you ever Google Meet me and Jasper is there, sorry, he's just Jasper. Anyway, so let's look at polynomials. So you'll have to take notes on paper because I don't have a way to get you these notes packets because I'm not allowed to come up to the school. So that's going to be okay. If you will, title your notes for today, polynomials. And then our I can statement, if you want to write that down, is, and you will be uploading these notes, so make sure that you do a complete set of notes as you watch the video. But our I can statement is, I can identify and describe polynomials and add and subtract them. That's what we want to be able to do after today's lesson. Now, I'm probably going to record this in a couple of videos because my internet at home is terrible. And it's going to take forever to get these videos to upload. So I'll probably stop somewhere in this video and then start it again in a second video. So you'll be watching probably two videos today. So if you're like, why are we watching two? Because my internet is junk. Anyway. So let's talk about what a polynomial is. So first we have to remember the different parts of an expression. And we've learned this earlier in the year, but we're going to recap it because it's important. So parts of an expression, there are basically four parts to one. You need to know that a term is a part of the expression separated by addition or subtraction symbols. You need to know that a variable is the unknown value. It's represented by a letter. You need to know that a constant is a term without a variable. And you need to know that a coefficient is a number attached to the front of a term. Nope, not a term, a variable. Sorry. A number attached to the front of a variable through multiplication. So what that means basically is if you had something like 3x squared plus 2x minus 1, that's an expression. Each of these is a term because those are the sections separated by the addition or subtraction. This, the x, is a variable. So that's a variable, and so is this one. The 3 and the 2 are both coefficients. Because they're both attached to the front of the variable through multiplication. And the number by itself that has no variable is called the constant. So if you need to, pause the video right here and get all of these notes down. You will need the notes for the practice that you have to do on this. It's very vocabulary heavy practice. So you want to jot that down so that you have access to everything that you need. Then you can unpause the video and keep going. I'm not going to sit here and wait because that just makes my video longer. It takes longer to upload. So pause it, finish writing what you need down, and then move on. Then we get into specifics about polynomials. So the last slide was just about expressions. This slide is about polynomials specifically. So we need to recognize what a polynomial is. So a polynomial is a mathematical expression made up of terms. That's a polynomial, period. There are lots of different types of polynomials. So there are three names you can give them. Anything outside of these three classifications is just a plain polynomial, but there are three specific types. A monomial is a polynomial with one term. A binomial is a polynomial with two terms. And a trinomial is a polynomial with three terms. Anything more than this is just a polynomial. I should have made a note of that, so we'll make it out here. So if it has one or two or three terms, it's specifically called a monomial, a binomial, or a trinomial. If it has more than three terms in it, then you just call it a polynomial, period. Then they also ask us to describe the degree of a polynomial. And the degree of the polynomial is determined by adding the exponents on each term. So you'll take each term, add the exponents on each one individually. The term with the greatest overall exponent value determines the degree of the polynomial. So that's like if you had something like 5x squared y to the third, that would have a degree of 2 plus 3, or 5. Because you add the 2 and the 3 together to get 5. And then in a polynomial, there's something called a leading term and a leading coefficient. Now, typically, these will be in the front position of the polynomial. That's not always the case, but usually it is. Or they should be if they're written in the proper format, but sometimes they're going to throw things at you that are not that way. But the term with the highest degree is called the leading term. And the leading coefficient is the coefficient on the leading term. Again, you're going to need all of these terms because the practice on this particular lesson is very vocabulary heavy. So if you need to pause the video to finish writing those things down, do that. If not, move on to some examples with me. Okay, so we're going to name these polynomials based on their degree and how many terms they have. So looking at, write all four of these down. We're not going to need a lot of space because we're just going to name what they are. But write all four of them down and then come back and we'll work them together. Again, pause the video if you need to write them down. So when we go to name these things, the first thing we want to look at is how many terms they have, because we know from our vocabulary that we wrote down on the last slide, things with one term are called monomials, things with two terms are called binomials, and polynomials with three terms are called trinomials. So when we look at this, remember the addition or subtraction symbols are what separates the terms. So I have a subtraction sign here. So this is a term and this is a term, which means this has two terms. Two terms makes it a binomial. But I also want us to be able to describe the degree of the binomial. So I'm going to look at the exponents on each term. So on this term, the only exponent I have, or the only variable I have is x, and it's x to the third. So this term has a degree of 3. This one I have x squared and y squared. So I have to add those two together. 2 plus 2 is 4. This has a degree of 4. The one that's the greatest is the degree we go with. So this term, negative 5x squared y squared, with a degree of 4, tells me this is a 4th degree binomial. That's how we would name that. That's its classification. All right, look at this one. So again, I have one, two terms. That's what I'm looking for first. So I know this is a binomial. So I want to tell the degree. So I've got to look at the exponents. Now this one, the x has a 6. The y doesn't have 1, which means it has a 1. So 6 plus 1 makes 7. Here, the x has a 3 and the y has a 3. 3 plus 3 makes 6. So I have a 7th degree binomial because 7 is the biggest of the degrees. Okay, look at the next one. The next one has 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. That makes it a trinomial. And again, I know that from my slide over here with my descriptions of that. So I need to tell its degree. So I'm going to look at each part individually. This one, again, an x by itself has a 1. So I'm going to look at all that. This x and this y both have a 1 each. So 2 plus 1 makes 3. 2 plus 2 makes 4. 1 plus 1 makes 2. So my biggest number is 4, which makes this a 4th degree trinomial. All right, this last one only has 1 term, just that, which makes it a monomial. So when I look at its degree, I only have to add up one thing. 2 plus 1 makes 3. So it's a 3rd degree monomial. All right, let's let you try some. Next, we might try a few more together. Let's see. Yeah, this will be the last slide we do here. So I'm going to work the first one of these with you, and then I'm going to let you try the next 4 and then come back and see if you're right. So if you will, you can just write these 5 things down. Actually, I'm going to ask you to sketch this table. It's not that big. It's not really any different than writing down 5 of these and then giving some headings. So sketch this table and then pause the video, sketch the table, then unpause it and come back and we'll work some of them. Make sure you pause it and sketch it before you move on or you'll get behind in what we're doing. Okay, so this has this broken down by name, and then you identify the leading coefficient and the constant term, and then you identify the degree. So we're going to just name it like binomial, trinomial, monomial, and then we'll name those other things, and then we'll name the degree at the end. So we won't do it like we did on the other slide where we called it a 4th degree trinomial or whatever. So this one, when we look at it, has 1, 2, 3 terms, and I know that because they're separated by plus and minus. So 3 terms makes this a trinomial. The leading coefficient, remember the leading coefficient is the coefficient on the leading term. And the leading term is the term with the highest degree. So when we look at these, let's decide what the degree is for each term first. This one has an exponent of 6. This one has an exponent of 2. This one doesn't have a variable, which means the exponent is 0. So my leading coefficient, or my leading term has to be the 24a to the 6th. The part of that that is the coefficient is the number in the front. So the 24 is the leading coefficient. The constant term is the term that has no variable. So for this one, the constant term is 5. Sometimes there's not a constant term. If there's not one, you just put 0. Or it does not exist. But you can put 0 because a 0 can always be there. And then the degree of this, we looked at this and saw that the highest was 6. So it's a 6th degree. Now look at the next one. So this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. And we saw on the other slide with the vocabulary on it that there was a name for a monomial, binomial, trinomial, but beyond 3, we just call it a polynomial. Again, to find the leading coefficient, I have to know which term has the greatest degree. Since none of them have more than one variable, I know this one's a 3, 2, 1, 0. So my greatest degree is 3. Go ahead and put that over here. The coefficient on that particular term is 2. That's the number in the front. My constant term is the one that has no variables with it. So it's 8. But you see that minus in front? It needs to treat it like a negative 8. So our constant is actually negative 8. And then it's a third degree polynomial. All right, pause the video and try the next 3. And then when you finish, unpause it and see if you were correct. If you didn't pause the video yet, pause the video. Okay. So this one, when you looked at how many terms it had, hopefully you saw that it was a trinomial. Your leading coefficient, so the leading term is this one because it has the highest degree of 3. Its coefficient, since there's not a number there, is 1. The constant was the negative 7 that didn't have a variable with it. And the degree was a third degree. When you did this one, hopefully you recognize it as a binomial because it has 2 terms. The leading coefficient, so this is going to be the leading term because it has the exponent of 1. This has the exponent of 0. So the leading coefficient here is negative 2. The constant is 4. The degree is first degree. And then this one, hopefully you saw, was a monomial. The leading coefficient is 4 because there's only one term. There is no constant term, so the constant term is 0. And it is a third degree. Okay, that's going to end this video, and then I'm going to come back with a video about how to add and subtract polynomials.